What's up, guys? It's Drew again from Drew Does Trucks. Once again, I am working in our late 1800s farmhouse, and this house has some very interesting doorknobs. This is what they look like. I don't know what this style is called exactly, but they have this catch screwed into the door frame. They have no recess for a doorknob, and they have these very loose old doorknobs. And this here is probably the one in the best shape in the entire house. They have this skeleton key hole, and there's like a hole drilled through the door itself. So there's just a tiny little hole, the thickness of this doorknob that goes through. So the problem is these locks don't work, and most of these, like I said, this one's in the best shape. Most of these don't work anymore. And here's actually one that I've replaced. I've been slowly going through and replacing them. So you can see this is the hole where the doorknob was, and then I installed the doorknob itself for the new lock, the new knob, where you'll have to excuse this tile. We're going to be remodeling soon, but so I had to do the hole in the door and the recess for all this. And I've got all my tools up here with me because I'm going to get ready to change out the one in the hallway, and I wanted to show you guys how you do that. So if you're interested in making one of these, so here's a good example of what most of the ones in the house are like. They're just completely worn out. They're very noisy. If you want to see how to turn this into a modern doorknob like this that has an actual locking feature, which is nice for these bathrooms and the bedrooms and stuff, just follow along and I'll show you how to do it step by step. Alright, so if your doorknobs look like this, you want to make them look like the newer ones. All you really need to get started, if you actually have this style, you need to go to Lowe's and get a couple dowels. I want to say these were 3/4 and 1/2 inch dowels. You will only need those if you have a doorknob this thickness to fill. You'll need some kind of saw to cut those with. I have my Milwaukee circular saw. That's optional. You can use a small hand saw. The one thing you definitely will need for this project is a reliable drill. This is an 18-volt Milwaukee Fuel. You don't need one this big or expensive, but you will need a decent drill to be able to run the components of the kit that will drill the new hole for the new doorknob. So we're going to start. So this is a Milwaukee Fuel drill. You need a decent drill for this. You probably don't need one quite this expensive, but you will want a decent, maybe 18-volt drill. You will need a hammer. I use a ball peen hammer, so that's easier to use. You'll need a modern doorknob set. This is a Defiant brand, which is just a cheap one from Home Depot. We're not looking for security. These are interior doors. And then Ryobi makes two components that are going to make your installation much easier. They make this doorknob installation kit, and I'll show you how to use that in just a second. This is what requires your drill, because this kit comes with hole saws, and this is the larger one. It's actually quite a large hole saw. And you'll also want to grab, I like this, this is the Ryobi doorknob chisel kit, and I'll show you how to use that as well. Those kits are like 20, I think they're like $20 or $30 together at Home Depot. I'll post links in the description. Alright, so the first step in installing a new doorknob is to get the old one off. This uses old flathead screws. They've been painted over many, many times. So the first thing I like to do is take a flat screwdriver blade and your hammer and tap to try and get that old paint out of there. And then, these are just old wood screws. You can use an impact driver to speed things up, but as you can see, just a regular screwdriver works just fine. Alright, so this is what the old lock looks like. This is supposed to be a latch that activates the lock from this side. None of these really work. and we did have some skeleton keys left by a previous owner. None of the locks actually operate and lock. I've actually always kind of worried that one of my children might somehow find a way to latch these and lock themselves in or out. So all the more reason to get rid of that. As you can see, here, this is what you're left with. You'll have a skeleton key cutout. We're going to cut that out to install the new doorknob, and you're going to have a hole left by the old knob. And I found these holes very wildly in size. This is a 1/2 inch dowel, so this is actually too big. We may have to get a different size dowel to fill this. This has worked. One of these two dowel sizes has worked for the other several doorknobs I've installed. But we'll take a look at that. And what I mean by that, if you look at this one here, this is where the hole was. We filled that. This particular one took the 3/4 inch dowel, and then I put wood putty over it and sanded it down. So this door is ready to be disassembled and repainted. I want to try and do all of the doorknobs, so then I have them all installed correctly. And then once we have that, at some point we will have a painting day where we will break these doors down and paint them one at a time. We'll have to remove the doorknobs and stuff again, but they're pretty easy to get out once they're installed. So this is it. So your doorknob is gone. You're gonna have some hardware left on this side, and we are gonna go ahead and pull that off right now too. Alright, so this is what this side looks like. Someone really wanted to put a lot of holes here. I have a feeling these were either maybe installed incorrectly. I have no idea why they would have drilled that many holes there. But we'll use wood putty and we'll fill that up. Thankfully these doors are painted white, so we don't have to worry about the grain matching. Alright. So this is the point in our installation where we're going to use the Ryobi tool. This is actually a pretty cool thing. Whoops, let me leave you hanging there. All right. So this is your Ryobi doorknob installation jig. And these are, the jig itself isn't very expensive, but you get it with a hole saw that comes with your 2 1/8 hole saw for your knob. And then it comes with a can't remember what size this is. 1 inch. So you figure out where you want your doorknob to go, and that's actually really nice. Really nice feature of this, because like for this we have this existing damage, so we're going to want our existing doorknob to cover as much of that as possible. So then what we'll do is we'll open our new doorknob. And these doorknobs come with your hardware to install the new latch and everything else. So this is our hardware pack for the new doorknob. We're going to go ahead and open it and remove 2 of these small wood screws. We are going to put a Phillips head bit on our impact driver. And then we're going to position our jig where it covers our damage. And one thing, your hole saw is going to drill right down the middle with its the guide bit. So you never want to position it dead center over existing damage. And also, this is adjustable for 2 different doorknob depths. So it has 2 3/4 and 2 3/8. These doorknobs actually will fit, if you look in the specifications, they'll fit either way. They fit both depths. So you can kind of try and do it how it would best fit your door frame. One consideration is different doors have different trim buildup on the inside, some have different thickness. So I tend to use the further one whenever possible to get the doorknob a little closer to the center of the door, so your hand isn't like shoved up against that on the inside of the door. But you'll position this to cover your damage, and then you'll stick a screw in these holes in the end of it. And this is going to be kind of hard to do to show you, but we'll make sure that our jig is where we want it. We'll hold it in place with one hand, and we'll go ahead and put our screws in. Now your door, if you're replacing an existing lock, your door may very well already have a latch here for you to reuse the holes. This one doesn't, because we're dealing with that infant style doorknob. So once we have this in place and we have our depth set where we want it, the next thing to do is to prepare our hole saw. And the kit comes with, the kit's going to come with this arbor, and then it comes with 2 different size hole saws. I added this washer, good hole saw bits, and I may actually have one in my other tool bag. So this is a Milwaukee one, and you'll see they use these pins. This is really my only beef with the Ryobi kit. A good hole saw arbor, like this one, these hole saws have holes in the top, and this will thread in, and once you thread it in, these pins drop into those holes, and that locks it in place, and that keeps it from getting locked up, because it'll force its way with great torque as you drill all the way down. And the crappy part about the arbor that's included with the Milwaukee kit is it does not have those pins. So to me, that's probably its greatest shortcoming. So what I did is I just added this big washer. I think it used to be a lock washer. And I added that over the threads, and that makes it much easier to get that back off with a screwdriver, whatever we've done. So because this is a big bit, we're going to use our drill in 1 setting for a slow setting. Just gives us the most torque we can to power through. We're going to line this up with our hole. These guide bits generally are adjustable, and this is no exception. So you have a flathead screwdriver bit here. So if you see our guide bit's hitting the door, so we can't be certain that we're completely centered inside that hole. So we're going to loosen that screw, and we really only need that bit to push through about that far. And all that's doing is drilling a hole to center this as we go ahead and drill it. So now you can see that fits this much better. So as we make contact with the door, you're going to have to get a hold of your saw. Sorry, get a hold of your drill. As we make contact with the door, you want to get a hold of your drill. You want to try and keep it as level as possible. A lot of times with hole saws, there's a tendency to like rock them, and they will cut faster that way. But if you're trying to drill a straight hole through your door, you have to try and keep the drill level. I like to pull it back out and try and clean that hole out, because that's going to help your hole saw continue to cut better throughout the cut. Now, once you start to get most of the way through, generally you're going to want to stop and check the other side. What we're looking for is this pilot bit poking out. There's a reason for that, and I'll show you what it is. So we're looking on this side of the door. Here we go. So as you'll see right here, see our pilot bit poking through right here. So then we're going to stop on this side, and we're going to resume drilling from the other side. You can drill the whole way through just from one side, but what's going to happen when this hole saw punches through this side of the door, it's going to have a tendency to push all of that wood around the cut out. So instead of having a nice neat hole, you're going to tear a bunch of that out, especially with these older dry doors. So we're going to put our guide bit in that hole. Whoops. We're going to snap our little latch in here. We'll get into that in a second there. So usually once you get your hole started on this, you'll get a nice clean start. And there you go, you get a nice clean hole through the door, very minimal tear out around the hole. The other thing it does is it makes your wood plug that you've cut out of your door much easier to get out. So we'll take a look at this. You can see how the jig has made this perfect hole exactly where we need it, but we're not ready to take that off yet. So what this has done, it has lined up the bore that our doorknob is going to go in perfectly with where our latch is going to go. So the next thing we need to do is to swap our large hole saw for our small hole saw. So this is the 2 1/8, and these can be really difficult to get off. Sometimes if you just stick a flathead screwdriver bit in it and put the drill in reverse, you can pop them right off. Alright, and so as I mentioned, the guide bits on these are adjustable. As you swap bits, this one's much longer. You'll see your guide bits all the way inside, so you will have to loosen. You will have to loosen your guide bit again using your flathead screwdriver. Drop your guide bit down so it sticks out the end of the bit, into the hole saw. There we go. And again, it just barely needs to protrude to start your hole. All right. So you can see that we're barely protruding at the end of the hole saw. And so what we're going to do here is, if we look down the barrel of our jig, we're going to put our hole saw in. See how it centers it perfectly. We want to keep our drill perfectly level. Some drills have a bubble level indicator in there. If you're not confident in this step, use a bubble level indicator. And we make our guide hole. And just like the other cut, we're going to try and drill as straight as possible. I like to back the drill bit out to clear the cuttings. You can see on this particular door how quickly it gets gummed up. These are pine doors. As you can see, we just popped through. We have our plug of wood inside our hole saw, which we'll deal with that in just a second. But what you've got now is you've got your hole that the actual latch of your doorknob assembly is going to go through. And that is perfectly in the center of the larger hole that we drilled before. So your temptation right now is going to be to unscrew those 2 screws and pull this off so you can admire your handiwork. But you don't want to do that yet, because this kit comes with, and to me, this is really one of the most valuable features. This is your auto strike indicator. So this goes in like this. There we go. And it is depth adjustable. You can slide it in and out. And as you slide it back in, wherever that goes is exactly the spot you need to mark with a pencil to install your latch. So in this case, it may be easier for us to mark on the inside of the door. All right, so we are inside the hallway. The camera's resting on my leg. Hopefully you can see what we're working on here. You can see that this is where our latch indicator is. What I like about this will show you where to drill your hole. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So you mark your hole. That's just where the narrow part is. You can pull this out, flip it over, push it all the way in, and that's going to show you where to chisel for your latch plate. All right, so now that we've made our little marks here, we will be able to remove the jig from the door, and we're getting there. We're almost done. So these are our screws that we're going to reuse for our new doorknob, so we don't want to lose them. And in case you're wondering, this jig, let me pull this out of here. I have used this jig now to do about a half dozen doors. And as you can see, it takes a little bit of abuse, especially this larger hole saw bore. But, you know, you could do a ton of doors with this thing. So if you have a house like ours where you're just doing renovations, to me, it's well worth it. All right, so we have our end plate drilled here, but what we don't have is our recess for this end of the doorknob latch. So the way these come, they're going to have this, which isn't necessary for this type of installation. So you stick a screwdriver in, you pop off that, you pull it off the end of it. So we're going to stick this in here, and you can see that's exactly how this is going to work. It's going to sit right in there, but we're going to need this on there first. There we go. That's what's actually going to hold that in place. The doorknob's going to go through the middle. So if we look at this, we need to chisel a recess, because right now that wouldn't close, that would hit that. Fortunately, the other Ryobi tool that I showed you, will take care of that quite easily, because this is a very sharp chisel edge. In addition to that, I would recommend anyone taking on a job like this, go buy a decent set of chisels. This is a Buck brand. They sell these at Home Depot. I'll put a link to this in the description. This one's really sharp. It holds an edge really well. Nice sharp chisels are so much easier to work with. So you're going to take your hammer. You're going to open your door right here. And this is conveniently going to be the same size latch for the hole we're going to make in here and in here. We'll start with this one. We're going to center it in our hole. We're going to keep it level. And we're going to tap it right here. You tap here and here. You can see that's made a square cutout. And then this actually has a chisel here. So if we stick that in our hole, the depth that we want to chisel out, see how that tapped down and it makes a perfect little recess there. I'll show you that again the other way. We'll hold it upside down. It's a little bit trickier. We don't want to go too deep. We don't want to go too shallow. So once we do these initial cuts, you're pretty much done with this tool. Unless you really butchered it. All right, so we've got some splintering. So that's why this tool is great, but you're always still going to need an old school chisel to finish it off. I haven't done a single one where I haven't needed to finish it off with this. So as you can see, we have a nice clean cut there. And then if we take our door latch and our plate, we'll dog hair on it, and we test fit them. So it should be pretty close to a perfect fit. This particular one looks like we didn't get this cleaned out all the way. So this is a 1-inch chisel, which is just a little bit big to do some of this detail work with. it's about the exact width you want this cut out to be. And that's why I said I really like the Ryobi tool. It makes you a nice clean shape, but unfortunately it doesn't replace the need to have an actual old school chisel. I think that'll actually be okay. We can go ahead and put our screws in and see how it looks. See if we can. Yeah, that's perfect. I didn't want to clearance that just for that extra millimeter there, but that's, if you can see, that's going to be perfectly flush with that door, more or less. We'll make sure that we have room for that to close. Plenty of room on this door. And then this is where our doorknob is going to get installed. So your lock will always go on the inside, and this lines up with the hole, and there's 2 or 3 different holes here in this door, in this doorknob assembly, see? So we line it up. This is for your different offsets, like I said before. So because we use our outer one, we're going to line up an outside hole. We're going to stick this in. And then we've got these 2 sleeves. These are plastic. They line up with, we've got these 2 sleeves. They're plastic. They're going to line up with these 2 screw holes. And we will make sure it's unlocked. Okay. There we go. Alright, so then we open our hardware kit that came with our door. There's going to be 2 more wood screws, and there's going to be 2 long screws. The long screws are we're going to pass through this doorknob and into the door. And if you look at this particular door, you know, it's funny because this house, every single door is different. So we probably could have used the shorter offset and we wouldn't be hanging over this trim. But like I said before, if you look at how close this doorknob is to this, if we would have used that closer offset, a guy with big hands like me would have went to turn the door and our knuckles would have been right up against that. So sometimes there's not much you can do, and it ends up being a compromise. Because I would like it if it looked neater, and if we had that doorknob all the way over the rest of the door, but not enough to not be able to use it. So we're going to thread these in. Like I said, those plastic sleeves are going to go guide these screws. If this was properly set up, it would guide these screws in. Now you're going to find it's very difficult to get a screwdriver in around this doorknob. So I just use my fingers here. I go ahead and run that in. And you really can't get by using an impact on that. And that's where I just revert to an old school. I revert to an old school long-handled screwdriver. These don't have to be very tight. There's no reason to use the impact. It just doesn't do well. It ends up rubbing against your doorknob, ruining the finish. There's lazy moments in my life where I've tried it and just not been able to be successful at it. As you can see from this, it takes about 30 seconds to get it on with a regular screwdriver. So we will go one side tight, come back, tighten the other side. Okay, so it's tight, we're unlocked. Then we're going to move our attention over to our latch side. means I'm gonna have to move you. Okay, there's a chair right here, which we'll make convenient use of. Let's see here. There you go. All right, so we have our pencil marks where our latch is gonna go. Our latch came in our kit. We have our 2 wood screws left. Charlie's coming up the stairs to join us. So we marked where our hole needs drilled. So we still have our 1-inch hole saw bit. And it still has that plug of wood in it that we cut out of the door. So we'll put our saw in reverse, take a screwdriver and stick it in and push that plug up out. This is the plug that we cut out of the door to install the latch. Then we're going to put our hole saw back on the arbor. And then right where we drilled, right between where we drilled our holes, we're going to put our pilot bit. And we're going to drill in far enough for the latch to click into this. So that's about all the further we need to go. And then I have a 1/2 inch chisel that I like to use here just because it's smaller and it gives me more control. And I'll just go up and down and slice through that plug we just made. As you can see, once it's drilled through, it comes out pretty easy. And as you can hear from the sound changing, we're through our plug and into the wood of the door frame. And that doesn't even have to be super neat, and you'll see why. So the next thing you want to do is you get your Ryobi latch indicator again. This cutout, like once again. So where it gets tricky is if you're right up against this, like I am here, if I hit this, it's going to damage this doorway. So if you're close, you can take a screwdriver and remove this little latch. It has 2 little screws here. And when I say little, I mean very little. They're easy to lose once removed. They're this big. And usually that'll buy you enough room. Once you undo your screws, you just pull this straight out. There it goes. So you see that part comes off. And usually that'll give you enough room. This particular door, because this door stop is so far in, as you can see when I'm in my hole, this is still going to hit. And there's no way to avoid that. So what we're going to do for this one is grab our trusty 1-inch chisel. We're going to start right here, even with the back of the hole. And we've marked our lines. And we can test fit them against this plate turned upside down. As you can see, we're going to have to move those lines just a little bit. But they do give us a guideline because this isn't exact. This has an allowance for the door to sag as it's over time. So centered on our hole, we're going to make pencil marks top and bottom. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use our chisel, come to the back of our hole, go up to our pencil marks, and making a nice straight line, we're going to tap our chisel. We're going to do the same thing at the bottom of the hole. In this case, I'm just going to start up here. Work my way up. There we go. Too shallow. So this is a great time to learn to use a chisel if you're not comfortable using one. Everything that you do on these doors ends up being covered by a metal plate. In this case, this metal plate that fits in there pretty well. Took just a little bit too much material, but honestly, once that gets painted, you won't even be able to tell. So we have our package that came with our doorknobs with our 2 remaining screws. We're going to put this in. We're going to hold it with one hand. Look at this. Correction, we're going to drop it on the floor. Put it up against our door. Dog hair everywhere. And we're going to start our screws in. Go ahead and drive your first screw in all the way, because these wood screws have an oval head, so they're going to pull that themselves center in that plate, and then you can very carefully center it in the plate as you start it. Oops, this one's wanting to follow the trim. See if I can stay there. There we go. The bit will pull out because it's magnetic. So there's our trim plate in. And I'm going to show you guys what this looks like. All right. So this is what our plate looks like. We are going to come back through. We'll sand this, put some wood filler in our holes. That's going to be down the road. I'll make a part 2 video on how to do that. We're going to paint this door frame. I don't like the way these stick out. So what I like to do is take a dead blow mallet like this, and I will kind of gently just roll that over. That just eliminates the chance that someone's going to come along, get a dress or a sweater stuck in that. And then we'll test it out. And of course it closes perfectly. The fantastic thing about the Ryobi stuff is it lines everything up. There's no guesswork. Using that strike indicator on here just puts this exactly the depth that it needs to be at. I love that. Your door closes perfect. There's no shake, there's no wiggle. Your doorknob, all the pieces go exactly where they want to be. This is what I was talking about, where we could have used that inside. The narrower spacing on the jig and the doorknob. But as you can see, trying to grab this doorknob, if it was another ½ inch closer, would be impossible for me. I'd have to come in like this, and that's just not functional. This is my daughter's room, which I just did. You can see where I've plugged it with a dowel, but I haven't yet had the chance to come in and sand this down and refinish it. But hers had the narrower spacing. You can see right here. My big fat sausage fingers just barely clear this. And if I go to make a knuckle, my hands are against this door. So that's why I use the wider spacing on this door, which is a door that I use every day to come and go out of this hallway. So that just will have to be what it'll be. Maybe we can fill it in with some caulk or something just to take up that little gap. Not much you can do because that trim is that way, but the doorknob itself looks nice. So if this helped you out, like and let me know. It makes me feel good. It helps YouTube, helps me. And if you want to see part 2 on how we come back and we fill in these holes, this dowel hole, I'm gonna have to go to Home Depot and get a smaller diameter dowel than what I have. This ½ inch may be as good as it gets. I may just have to sand this down. But either way, I'll go check and see what they have in stock, and I will show you how we do all that. This doorknob will end up popping back off, which takes just under a minute to pop off. And we'll get this all sanded like we did the other. And we'll do that, like I said, we'll do that in the second video. So thank you so much for your time. Hopefully this helped you out, and I'll see you guys on the next video.